Good morning and welcome to the video guide for assignment 2 current issues. So it's due this Thursday the 15th, just before Christmas, like nice little Christmas present for you. And it's been out for a little while, so you need to make sure you meet that deadline. Effectively, if we just go straight to it, we're looking for a magazine article, a newspaper article in that style and format. And it talks about putting appropriate images in. The key here is that actually the pass is the describe and the explain is the merit. Now, this task 1 here, what it's asking you to do is in a magazine report style that we talked about, create an article with supporting images, and your article must describe and explain the influence of media on a selected sport in the UK. Within your magazine article, you must cover the following areas. We've covered this in lessons, so I'll go for it. So you should be talking about the influence that TV media has on football and how you should consider both the positives and the negatives. You should also consider how the media, and we talked about that Frank Lampard goal, how the media has a significant impact on rule changes in football. We can also talk about how the media has had an impact on changing the timeouts. And again, make sure that you look at both sides, the positives and the negatives throughout each of these points. And I'll add some additional points that we need to talk about as well. We can look at how the local and national press report papers. What we looked at is broadsheets and tabloid papers, and look at the positives and negatives of those in terms of the impact they have on football. And then we can look at the internet and the impact the internet has on football, or the impact that media internet has on football. So you think about social media, Joey Barton we talked about actually allows them to get close to the fans, but also the negative is when you get somebody like Joey Barton who posts negative stuff, you need to think about that and how that has an impact. We also talked about streaming of games at 3 p.m. So again, come back to that and think about how that's had a negative impact. A couple of other points that are not on here that you need to tie in is sponsorship and advertisement, and how that sponsorship and advertisement has a significant impact on football, both positively and negatively. And we also talked about the punditry and narrative technique. So pundits, what they say, how they can influence the audience, and how that has a positive and negative impact on football. And then finally we looked at gender imbalance and how the media has an impact on gender imbalance, both positively and negatively in football. So we know that football's come a long way, but it's still not where it needs to be. What has the media done to solve that, or are they not doing enough to make female football as popular or as in the public eye as the male Premiership football? So that's task 1. But remember, think about what you're writing about. So if it's television, the influence on football, and give me key facts and examples. So if you talk about television, you're looking at Sky, tell me how they influence football. Give me examples of how they influence football, how much money they put in, what impact that has on the sport. And then task 2 is the blog posting, and this is the technology. So we looked at lots of different technologies, but there's more within each of these. So it says the second part of your involvement in the preparation for National School Sports Week is to create a website posting blog which features the effects of technology on a specific sport. And again, we looked at football. You don't have to do that, but considering you've done a lot of it in class, it might be worth doing that. Your blog should describe and explain the following key areas, making relevant links to your chosen sport with good practical examples and images. So first of all, we look at clothing. So when we looked at clothing, we looked at the football shirt and how it's evolved. So we took it from here to here, and then we talked about how it's going to have an impact on performance in that sport. We then looked at personal equipment. So a couple of things. We actually focused on footballs, which is not actually personal, but it's a piece of equipment that's involved in football. But we also looked at the boot, and we've looked at where it came from, where it is now, and how that has an impact on the sport, both positively and negatively. We then went on to look at cameras. So we looked at instant replays, freeze frames, analysis, in-game analysis on the television, and how that has a positive and negative impact on football. You can also look at player cam and things like that, where it literally tracks a player, which wasn't there back in sort of the 1970s. Actually, it's probably only just evolved in about the 2000s. Then we also looked at the technology in terms of goal line technology and how goal line technology has had an impact on football. So again, we come back to this word equipment. I guess it could come under this section. It's not personal, but it is equipment for football, and how that has had a significant impact on the game in terms of changing of rules. Then we looked at drug testing, so that comes into this analysis section. So we looked at drug testing and how that's evolved and changed, and how that has a positive and negative impact. And again, you've got to tie these examples with each of these. So you talk about drug testing, you talk about Rio Ferdinand and his 8th-month ban. Adrian Mutu years ago for Chelsea, cocaine, tested positive for cocaine. Then we talked about hyperbaric chambers, how that has an impact on football, how it could be potentially unfair because some clubs, lower league, don't have that opportunity to be able to afford that equipment, and therefore they're at a significant disadvantage. We looked at FIFA, the computer game, and how that game has evolved and changed and is help or could help to develop performance because players are playing on it, or individuals playing on it, sorry, and there's an opportunity to kind of learn the tactics through that medium of the game. But is it just enough, or does it take people away from the game itself? So you need to think about that. And then finally we looked at artificial pitches. Again, I think we come back to this equipment section here, and we looked at, okay, this is an artificial pitch, great. What does it allow us to do? Or weather, fantastic, we play all year round. What's the positives and negatives? And then go from there in terms of those. So every time you talk about each one, and I'll talk about each one that we've done within class, so if you look back at the handouts on Moodle for technology and media, go through each one and make sure that you talk about them, and then you talk about the influence they have on football, both positively and negatively, and you link those examples in, and then you should be hitting these criteria. Okay, that's that from me. Thank you.